أهلا بيكم في بودكاست كربون. معاكم أحمد رجب.
Okay, welcome again in a new episode of Carbon Podcast, and today we have a very special guest, an old friend. Hi, Juan. How are you today?
Hi, Ahmed. Good. Very happy to be joining you today in the
Yeah,
podcast.
it's always nice to meet you, and I'm really happy that we host you here in Carbon Podcast. As you know that we have talked about this before, that we are trying to target the audience in the Middle East, especially in the oil and gas and petrochemical industry. And today, as we have you as a special guest, so let me first give like a small introduction about yourself. We have today Juan Miguel. He is the CEO of Finboot. And I would like you to give also a small introduction about yourself. Yeah, so welcome in Carbon Podcast. And yes, go ahead. The floor is yours. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Ahmed. First of all, thank you very much for the invite and for having me here. I'm the CEO and one of the founders at Finboot, right? So that's kind of the capacity in which I am here today. Finboot is a green supply chain management company that helps to accelerate industrial decarbonization, the energy transition, and basically help producers in both the oil and gas and the chemical industry reduce the carbon footprint of their products and make sure that they are gathering the supply chain data that backs up those claims, right? A bit about me as well. Like I come from a very heavy technical background. I'm an engineer by training with a PhD in physics, but I've always been very kind of working closely to the industry, making sure that what we're building, what we're designing is technology-enabled products that have a place on scalable markets, right? And I used to do that in environmental technologies with hardware solutions for environmental monitoring, essentially. But then moved into Finboot, where we've been working over the past 8 years in the green supply chain management and digital traceability space.
Sure. Yeah, and it's our pleasure that we have you here today. And our topic today, it will be the circular economy. And I think this is very, let's say, trending topic nowadays. Many companies, they are talking about the circular economy. So let's switch the gears and let's start our conversation today. I would like to start about how the companies like specifically in the oil and gas or the petrochemical industry, how they are transitioning to the circular economy and make that balancing with still sustaining the profitability and let's say keep the business model consistent even with the shifting to the circular economy. So which is very challenging. Yeah. So from your perspective, we need to know that. Yeah.
I think this is a great point, and it's a huge concern for the industry, right? Because the oil and gas industry, it's been, or let's face it, it's a very conservative industry. They have their profits down to like a logic, right? Everything predictable, some market variations, of course, but they know very well how to react and adapt to those. And now they're facing an entirely new threat in a way, which I would rather say it's an entirely new opportunity. But let's say that's semantics. But the reality is that it's one that is not as predictable, right? And that also requires significant investments. So you need investments in new facilities, you need investments in new product developments, in new supplier networks, right? So there's a lot of investment. And I think probably the area where kind of industry leaders aren't so comfortable with is the fact that all of these investments are tied with a high degree of uncertainty, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's fair, because it is what it is, right? That is the reality, right? But I think the number one kind of decision or choice that needs to be made, right, is understanding that, look, we're no longer talking about if the energy transition is happening or if the move to a more circular economy will be the direction that we're moving to. That very much is the direction, right? So I think we need to recognize the fact that this is happening and now take the best business decisions to be sure that we monetize that appropriately, right? Or that we guarantee the survival of our organizations, but also that they can continue to be as profitable and as successful in this new ecosystem. And in order to do that, I think the core two areas where industry leaders need to be paying very close attention is policy and markets, right? So Policy is key, particularly European policy, because it's becoming a huge driver for the transition within the EU, but also for anyone that wants to access the EU, right? So they've
Right.
done that in a very savvy way, you know, in some cases. But you're also seeing similar moves from the UK, from India, from China, from some US states, right? So that policy driver, it's becoming more consistent and it's becoming more clear. There's a lot of challenges in kind of harmonization of standardization of policies, but policy is already acting as a driver, right? And then the other initiative is that one of the markets, right? Which is essentially, look, you already have certain verticals where buyers are paying premiums on those circular and renewable products. So that's where you need to kind of focus on, right? Satisfy that demand. There's a huge demand for circular products in most consumer-facing industries, right? So in CPG, in food and beverages, in automotive and pharma even. These are all industries that they're being pushed to decarbonize themselves, back to that policy point. But the only way they can do it is by looking at the supply chain, right? So they need the petrochemical producers to actually offer them routes for decarbonization, and they're willing to pay for that, right? So how to do it? Again, look very closely at the markets and the products that are receiving premiums already, and those that there's a gap on circular or renewable or low carbon chemicals, and pay strong attention to policy as well, of course.
Yeah. So I believe this will take us to the next part, as like the transition to the circular economy and the balancing between the circular economy implementation and also keeping the business running and keeping the profitability. So I think most of the corporates will face, or they are facing a lot of challenges, like implementing the circular economy or the recyclability, and again from the regulatory changes and all of this. So we need to know also about the challenges that the corporates are facing during shifting or transitioning to the circular economy.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, and as you say, right, there's many challenges, right? I'm going to focus on two of what I think are some of the biggest areas, right? So one is financing the energy transition, right? Or financing the shift to a circular economy, right? So I think their policy is also causing a big impact, right? We've seen it in the US over the past couple of years with the Inflation Reduction Act that has been a tremendous source of funds for a lot of US capital-intensive organizations to, through incentives, be able to free up some of the capital that is required for this investment, right? We see a little bit of that in the EU, although the EU is more traditionally more focused on the stick rather than the carrot, right? To borrow from that analogy, but there's still opportunities for financing, right? So I think one area is, again, industry leaders need to become more creative in the ways in which they're going to be financing this decarbonization, right? This energy transition and this move to the circular economy, right? There are opportunities there, and there is a way to do this basically without sacrificing, let's say, the instability or the financial stability of their organizations, right? Then the next challenge that I would focus on is kind of more operational, right? It's okay, let's say we've got the funds, we've got the money to invest in this. How do we actually change our processes, right? As you say, our product design and so on, right? I think there's a huge challenge in the supply chain, right? Because all of these internal processes, yes, they need to be adapted, right? But that's probably closer to their control, right? So that they need to work on it, but they can act on that perhaps somewhat more easily. But I see the biggest challenge on the supply side, right? Mainly because a lot of these, we're calling them new raw materials, but they've actually been there all the time.
Exactly.
They were considered waste, right? So it was waste before. We didn't have any of the sourcing networks to recover that and reinsert it in the value chain, right? So, and there's a lot of work that's been done there, right? But that in order to really get that closed loop or as closed loop as we can, there's a lot of work on the supply chain, on the supply side that needs to be done, right? And then it's also understanding what the different loops are, right? So look, from a consumer standpoint, we need to make sure that us consumers are reducing our consumption of some of these products, and that we're reusing as much as possible, right? Wherever that's a possibility. And that in effect is probably the smallest loop, but it is yet a circularity loop that we're closing in there, right? When we look at the industrial scale, again, we have to make sure that that waste is properly managed, properly recovered, sorted, and reinserted, and that it's reinserted in the best path for that particular waste, right? If we think about plastics, for instance, the best way sometimes might be mechanical recycling. It's a closer loop, but the quality of the waste needs to also be the adequate one. But if not, let's make sure that that gets into a chemical recycling facility, right? Let's make sure that it's flowing through whoever needs that formerly considered waste, now a very high value raw material, right? So I think we really need to focus on that, and that expands again beyond plastics into a lot of raw materials. That's one example. You then have scrap metal, residual vegetable oils, compostable waste. There's so much more that again we're already building, and perhaps in the European Union, yes, some of these networks are a bit more advanced, but globally there's still a lot of work that we need to do to make sure that we're capitalizing on all of that waste, which is now very, very valuable.
Yeah, I think it's very, very clear, yeah, with all the challenges for shifting to the circular economy. But you mentioned something about the mainly in EU, they are following the stick, not the carrot. So this will take us to the second thing, which is we want to understand more about the influence of the regulation, and also the influence of the market demands as well, and also that it is between the going to the circular economy and also the regulation, especially in EU. And also to keep the profitability again. So we need also to know that how the regulation or the government regulatory affecting or influencing the transition to the circular economy.
Yeah. And I think, look, basically, we talk quite a bit about Europe because again, I'm based in Spain, right? So that's kind of through the lens that I look at it, and some of the EU Green Deal regulation. It's certainly basically they're the first movers in that regulatory scape when it comes to climate regulation or circular economy regulation, right? And I think regulation is certainly the biggest driver, right? So it's essentially what's creating a lot of push in the industry to move, right? And when we think about regulation, there's one side of it that is, okay, how do I make sure that I comply with regulation and still maintain profitability, right? Because complying with regulation may be another investment that I need to do. But the side of the picture that they can't lose is the fact that, well, the way this regulation is being designed and is being crafted now is in order to access the market, you need to be compliant, right? So perhaps like if you focus too much on profitability and I can't invest in regulation because then I'll lose profitability, well, actually, you might end up losing a lot more, which is a significant share of your market, which is the European market, right? So in order to access the European market, you now have to make sure that you are compliant or that your products are compliant with that EU regulation, right? Otherwise, you may be locked out of the market, right? So the product simply won't enter here, or the product will incur further premiums, right? Because it'll be carbon taxes or tariffs or things that in order to come in, it'll need to be added. So then that will impact even further your profitability, right? So I think one is, look, we need to put regulation at the forefront, right? And make sure that particularly on the products or the commodities that are being more scrutinized, right? So hydrogen is certainly the case. Any commodity that could be linked to deforestation, it's certainly the case. And again, any product in any transition product or sustainable product in the oil and gas and the petrochemical industry is certainly within that scheme. We need to make sure for those products that we are capturing all of the supply chain data required, that we have enough information and enough data to make sure, hey, we comply with European regulation. And that will give you two opportunities. One is, hey, your products can actually cross the border, right? So they can enter the market. But the other one is actually the European buyer, the industrial buyer even, is paying premiums because they need that raw material to create their own products, right? So they'll make sure, those who are producing within Europe, that they're paying premiums for EU compliant materials, right? And we're already seeing that extensively in the chemical industry, and I think it'll move from that into other segments as well.
Yeah, very clear. Yeah, I think with all this influences, I think it's like between influencing and adding more challenges to the shifting to the the circular economy
100%.
as well. So it's
Yeah.
So I just want. Go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
No, it's certainly challenging, right? And we would not say it's not, and it adds more complexities and more worries. But there is ways to look at those complexities in a more strategic way, and actually turn those complexities into another driver for monetization, right? And another driver for increased profitability. So it's, as I say, right, it's a new paradigm, it's a new value chain, but there are opportunities to make a lot of money in this space of energy transition.
Of course, yeah. Very, very interesting. Yeah. So I know that you already like very busy, and we don't want to consume more time from your time. So let me move directly to our very important point that I want to spot some light on it. Like, you know that recently we have been hearing about the cutting edge technologies and the implementation of AI or whatever the technologies that we have right now, which is evolving and developing in a very quick pace. So we want to know that how the impact of the digital technologies or how this can be integrated with the circular economy as well, especially with Finboot, which is like very advanced technology built on the blockchain. So we want first to know about the digital technologies integration with the circular economy, and I want you also to spot some light about how Finboot integrated that, like the blockchain, to the circular economy as well. And if we have any case studies, I know that you have many, so if we can share some.
Definitely, no, and I'm happy to talk through some of those. I think, look, the headline here is the petrochemical industry needs to embrace digital to ensure transparency, right? Especially in anything that has to do with the circular economy, right? So what's happening is you don't want any reputational risk that may hurt your brand. You don't want any non-compliance risk that is going to cause, again, more fines, more costs to be inputted into your supply chain, your products, or your organization. And you don't want any of the financial risk, because ultimately, if you're caught in that greenwashing space, then buyers will stop paying those premiums, but also this can turn into a bigger problem for you, right? So you need to make sure that whatever product claim or whatever environmental or carbon footprint claim you are putting out there, that is backed up by data, right? And that you have the data from your industrial process, from your suppliers, from the entire kind of ecosystem of stakeholders to be able to back up and substantiate your ESG and sustainability claims, right?
Cool.
That's precisely what we at Finboot kind of focused on, as you alluded to before. So we help these organizations with digital technologies, with software solutions that enable, let's say, this shared record keeping and this secure data sharing across the very complex supply chains and industrial processes that we have in chemicals and in the oil and gas industry. We've already been doing this for quite some time. So again, some of our customers include the likes of Repsol, who's a global multi-energy provider. We've been working with them since 2018, and we work across several business units, right, in both their chemicals and their fuels space. SABIC, it's again huge player in the Middle East, but of course huge global player as well. I think they're one of the world's largest chemical manufacturer, if not the largest. I think they say one of, just to be a bit more modest. So huge player in that space. We started working with their European headquarters, particularly around the plastic packaging space and circularity in that supply chain. But now that's moving and expanding into other chemicals. Moeve / Cepsa, formerly known as Cepsa, is another one of our customers. they've done that change on branding there to focus more on clean energies, which I think it's a great tactical move, right? And we work with them in both their chemicals, renewable chemicals, and in their now moving into the fuel space as well, or kind of the new energy space with them, right? So these are again some of the examples. Again, those two industries, oil and gas and chemicals, are two of our core verticals. We've got extensive experience there, and if anyone's interested in learning more about either these three clients or some of our other customers and other experiences in this space, I'd be more than happy to continue those conversations.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting topic, and also to see how the cutting edge technology, especially in the blockchain, which is the main Finboot business, that it's already implemented in circular economy, and many success stories that it makes me really happy that I'm seeing that it's already implemented, and it's many companies are adopting that. Yeah. So I think we came. Sure, go ahead.
If I just may add one final thought, is exactly so. Is that focus on blockchain, right? And the reason why blockchain as a digital technology is so strong for the circular economy is because of that transparency element that I talked about before, right? And because these whole ecosystems need to be based on trust, and the best way you can be trusted is by saying, hey, look at the technology that I'm using. That again, it provides all of that audit trail and all of that immutability and all of those elements that are the building blocks of what blockchain technology is, that are very well suited for the transparency required in circular economy value chains.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Again, I would like to appreciate your time. I know that you are very busy, so it's been a very interesting topic, and I'm sure that you added a lot to our audience for sure, and open more questions in their minds about this very interesting topic, not only the circular economy, but also the implementation of the new technologies in this aspect as well. So again, I really appreciate your time, Juan, and I hope this will not be the last time that we have you here in our podcast. Yeah, sure. And again, thank you, and wish you a good day. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye. Thank you.